deprived of good, but that's another discussion, right, that we can have. But alhamdulillah, we just finished Salat al-Asr. We're here in Irving. And inshallah ta'ala, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a discussion. This is really different than a lecture. I mean, we talk about this, we've talked about this many times, that a lot of times in a lecture you don't get full perspective. Whereas when you're kind of just tuning into a conversation, you might get more perspective, you might be able to really get some more practicality. So we really wanted to just kind of have a discussion. And that discussion is really in light of the fact that we're in the midst of that Ramadan slump.
Yep.
You know, midway through Ramadan. Right now the masajid are not full anymore. People are kind of taking a break until the last 10 nights, and then they get back into it. So halftime report, 15 days in Ramadan. So, you know, we really want to talk about this concept of building azima, building determination, building resolve. The hardest part of the process of tawbah is وَلَمْ يُصِرُّوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلُوا وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. The scholars always talk about that they don't return to that same sin, to that same form of disobedience knowingly. But unfortunately, a lot of times we try to break bad habits, and you know, we end up going right back to it. So what are your thoughts on this topic?
A lot of guys, I mean, brothers and sisters, but a lot of young people, you know, they start out Ramadan, they're like, okay, no more movies, no more video games, no more bad stuff. I'm not going to spell it out. And then they're good for like a week.
Right.
And then, you know, it's not shaitan, obviously, so it's got to be myself, and it kicks in like, okay, maybe a little bit. And it starts with a little bit of laziness, right? Because, I mean, things are compound. So you're like, okay, I've been spending all of my time, kind of whatever free time I found, I was going to the masjid, tarawih, you know, and that exhausts you so much that you don't really have time to do dumb things anyway.
Yeah.
But then you start getting a little lazy about salah, which means you get a little bit more free time, which means, hey, let's just, you know, TV remote or online or whatever. So the idea is to, you know, missing the opportunity for one good thing kind of opens doors to do a lot of other bad things.
Right.
And then one day can turn into a week, and before you know it, you're missing out on Ramadan.
Right.
You know?
And how do you think Ramadan can kind of, because that's obviously an attitude, that's just a destructive attitude to have outside of Ramadan or inside of Ramadan.
Yeah.
It just obviously manifests itself most in Ramadan. But how do you think Ramadan in particular kind of helps battle that laziness and builds that resolve and that determination?
I mean,
just kind of start off the top, this whole discussion.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Ramadan, one of the most incredible things about it, obviously for most people, is it's an unusual schedule. Everything is thrown upside down, right? So you're waking up earlier than you're used to, you're staying up later for good reasons than you're used to, right? And you're exposed, you're in a better environment generally, and people around you are just gathered for better reasons than other outside of Ramadan. And if a person's able to kind of stick it through, then it's actually quite a long time to be in, you would have to call it rehab, like a spiritual rehab, right? Because you're like in this messed up scene, and then in this month you kind of take a break from that, and you're just, the more you can keep up with it, the more you'll heal, really.
Right.
You know, so before you get back into the real life and started getting hit again, I really see it as an opportunity to kind of cut life off a little bit, put things on hold for a little bit, and really find yourself again.
Absolutely.
You know?
And you know, this is something that the scholars have spoken about frequently, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always treats an extreme with an extreme, حتى تعود الشيء إلى الوسط, until things come back to balance. So the whole idea, even on a community level, when you have you know, the first legislation of qisas, or the first legislation of al-ayn bil-ayn, an eye for an eye, for the people of Musa alayhi salam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely abrogated the entire concept of taking someone's life in return for another life with Isa alayhi salam. He had to treat the extreme for an extreme because Bani Israel went to such injustice. And then Isa alayhi salam abrogated it, حتى تعود إلى الوسط. Then it came to the middle ground, which is what we have today. And then on an individual level, when you're really, really messing up, you have to sometimes take extreme measures to ensure that you do away with
spiritual boot camp, man.
Right. So that way you do throw yourself off, and that's a good thing. And then inshallah, then it readjusts itself to real life.
You know, it like you said, and I keep harping on this in pretty much every lecture opportunity I get. At the end of the day, everything boils down to attitude. You gotta have like a mean attitude, like a strong attitude coming into Ramadan. And I know it starts tapering. I literally told myself in a khutbah last week, and then I told the family, we're gonna pretend tomorrow is the first day of Ramadan. We gotta start over. We're slacking. We're falling off. We gotta kick it again and start over. And we redecorated the house. We just
Nice.
Ramadan Kareem all over again, because you know it's almost as though like 10 days, 10 days, 10 days, like the Prophet divided it, alayhi salatu wasalam, is like 10.
Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily? No. Okay. But anyway, it's a way to re-celebrate.
Right.
Like, just start over again.
Right.
You know?
I mean, actually, even subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ said daily. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has urtaqa daily. Every single night, Allah chooses people in Ramadan that He frees from hellfire. So it's like every day, and that's the authentic narration in this regard. It's like every single day, you need to act like this is your last chance at Ramadan. And that's really what life is all about. You live, you die every single night. I was reflecting on this yesterday. You know, subhanAllah, a good friend of mine, whose son, you might remember Imam Farouk in Baton Rouge, right? His son-in-law, who's in his late 40s, and subhanAllah, his son is a hafid leading Taraweeh, and then not this night, but the night before last night, after praying Taraweeh, he went home, he went to sleep, and he didn't wake up. He passed away, rahimahullah.
SubhanAllah.
Just that idea that every single day is an audition. You live, you die, you live again, you die again, you live again, you die again. And so treating that builds that sense of
hopefully
resolve.
This month is the month we actually wake up to that reality.
I mean,
you know, everybody goes to sleep and most people wake up, but how many people wake up with that realization? You
right,
know?
Absolutely.
SubhanAllah.
So I think let's go through a few things.
Okay.
Because we want to make it as practical as possible. The first reason, and Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he said that when a person commits a sin, it starts off with their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's either out of forgetfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it's out of outright muharaba, right? Just waging war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't think anyone that's watching is in that state, I would hope, where it's just like I know I'm not forgetting Allah, I'm purposely doing this to anger Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the station of the munafiqeen. So can you just talk a little bit about taqwa as it relates to Ramadan, as it relates to building determination? The whole idea of ittaqullaha haqqa tuqati. Right? Can you just share some thoughts on that from a Quranic perspective?
There's so much that's been said about this, but I think one of the things that should be highlighted when we talk about Ramadan, and especially the relationship between Ramadan and taqwa, and fasting and taqwa, la'allakum tattaqoon, the direct association, right? Is the psychological element of fasting. Right. I mean, the idea that you consciously deprive yourself, and whether you're spiritually aware or not, or cognizant or not, you are physically constantly aware of the fact that you're short on drink and short on food. That doesn't leave you. You can't not feel thirsty. You can't not feel. So Allah, there's a spiritual feeling, which is a consciousness of Allah, but Allah Azza wa Jal makes us feel a constant physical feeling, and I compare it to like an internal battle. Right, so I'm at war with my throat. I'm at war with my stomach, that's yelling at me and screaming, "Feed me something." And I'm and physically speaking, naturally speaking, the natural response is to feed our body, right? But there's something in you that is stronger than your physical urges, that is telling your stomach and your throat to shut up until Maghrib.
Right.
We're not doing this because Allah's watching. So there's this al-muraqaba, and so it's kind of built into the idea of fasting,
right?
That, and it's so powerful that people, unless little kids that are experimental and stuff, but people don't cheat in Ramadan. People don't like go into a corner at the office and kind of chow down a Snickers bar, nobody saw me type thing. People have this consciousness, even the weakest Muslims have this consciousness that I'm fasting right now, right? So taqwa, in some sense or another, gets revived inside a person. They learn to watch themselves. And people sometimes, they eat and drink, and you've covered the fiqh of fasting and stuff. Like, people drink by mistake or eat by mistake and things like that. The guilt sets in right away. Like, what have I just done? Oh my God, I was fasting. Can't throw it, and there's this like feeling of, I shouldn't have done this. How could I have forgotten? Right? So it's building this idea of constantly watching yourself, keeping an eye on yourself, the entirety of your day, And so, I see a lot of power in that, like in that kind of self-discipline training, even for the Muslims that, subhanAllah, there are so many Muslims, unfortunately, that fast and don't pray, for example.
Right.
There's so many of them, right? And whether it's because of a lack of knowledge, or they don't think they can do it, or whatever, I mean, I would like to take a moment and tell them, like, look, praying is a lot easier than fasting. You're doing the harder thing already. Might as well just make it right.
Right.
Valid,
right? So what is I mean, I really want you to just focus on, because on that same note again, because I really want to just lay the foundation, then we start going to the practical steps. But ittaqullaha haqqa tuqati. You know, because it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before it's about yourself. Right? And the hadith I always reflect on when I look at that ayah is the hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that when the mizan is set up on the Day of Judgment, when the scale is set up on the Day of Judgment, they are so vast that if you were to place the entire heavens and the earth inside of them, لَوَسِعَتْهُمْ, and in one narration, لَوَزِنَتْهُمْ, it would fit them, you know, physically it could fit them, and then it could also calculate them, you know, to complete accuracy. And subhanAllah, even with that, some people of A'raf, equal deeds, some people will be a deed short or a deed above, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said that whenever that happens, the angels will speak. And they will say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لِمَنْ يَزِنُ هَذَا? Who is this meant to weigh for? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, for whomever I will from my creation. And the angels will respond. The angels who had no choice. In essence, when we're fasting, we're playing the role of angels, right? We're neglecting food, drink. And the main feature of the angels is لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ مَا أَمْرَهُم. They don't disobey when they're commanded.
At least that much we fulfill.
Yeah, so that's the major part. That is the key function of the angels. That's what differentiates them from us. Those angels would say, when they see the mawazeen and they see those scales, they would say, Subhanaka ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik. The Prophet ﷺ said that, how perfect are you? We didn't worship you as much as we should have worshipped you. And so the idea here, it was the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that made their deeds seem very little. Their good deeds seem very little. They've never disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can't.
But now that they see it in the grander perspective.
Yes, so the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what causes them to act like that. And so I think the first discussion in building resolve, like to stay away from sin. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً أَوْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ ذَكَرُوا اللَّهِ. Those people, when they wrong themselves, the believers wrong themselves, they commit sins. But the difference between them and other people is they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other people remember their social consequences. They remember what other people are going to say. They remember, all the other consequences. The believer remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's what drives him. So it starts off with dhakarullah and sayyidul istighfar. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduk, which is, the Prophet ﷺ called this the chief of istighfar, the chief of seeking forgiveness. This dua, Fortress of the Muslim people, we always say it, you just got to buy Fortress of the Muslim, but just look it up. The chief of istighfar is an acknowledgement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection, His favor upon you. وَأَنَا عَلَىٰ عَهْدِكَ وَوَعْدِكَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُ. I'm going to try absolutely everything I can.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability. So it starts off with that knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and muraqabah. It starts off with observing Allah. And observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Ibn Qudam rahimahullah said, you observe Allah and Allah observes you. You do muraqabah of Allah and Allah does muraqabah of you. It's an amazing concept. And he actually quoted Imam al-Tustari rahimahullah. And this is also from al-Dhahabi, that At-Tustari, he said that his uncle taught him. And this is where we get to the practical steps now. Because you want to teach yourself muraqabah. You want to teach yourself how to stay aware of Allah, so you don't see your good deeds as plentiful and your bad deeds as little, but rather you see your bad deeds as plentiful and your good deeds as little, so that it inspires you to do more. Tustari, he said that his uncle taught him from a very young age that every night before he sleeps, he should say, Allahu nadiri, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me. Allahu shahidi, Allah is witnessing me. Or actually I messed it up. Allahu shahidi, this is the problem when you don't prepare for a lecture. Allah is witnessing me. And he said, Allahu nadirun ilay, and Allah is watching me. Oh, here it is, okay. Allahu ma'i, Allahu shahidi, Allahu nadirun ilay. He said his uncle taught him to say every night, Allah is with me, Allah is watching me, Allah is witnessing me, and Allah is watching me. And so he said, Hatta wajadtu halawata, until I found the sweetness of it. He said he taught me that at a young age, right? Observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is with me, Allah is witnessing me, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching me. So what that teaches us is that, I think now to the more practical discussion, you need to have certain things that remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala consistently, be it in the form of people or in the form of things, environments, whatever it is, so that you don't fall back into that sin. Right? So that you do keep on maintaining that movement forward. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
first thing I tell people that consider themselves weak or consider themselves easily susceptible to sin is this is the right month to not be alone, Don't if you can't handle it, if you just can't be home with your Wi-Fi and your laptop or whatever, and you end up in messed up situations, just go to the masjid or something. Just don't be home. Don't be by yourself. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even if you don't find the encouragement to go into ibadah, at least find an opportunity to connect with relatives, to go meet with people in your own family or in your community that you know of that are sick, or that you haven't gotten in touch with for some time, or things like that. Like, just fill your time up where you're not idle, because not being idle doesn't necessarily mean you're always doing good deeds, but at least you're not putting yourself in the same old situation where you end up doing bad deeds, right? You're just too busy to do bad deeds. Keep yourself busy with even something that may not necessarily be a spiritual exercise. Maybe you're just going to visit a friend or something like that, but at least you're not you're not in your room by yourself, and you're not on social networking outlets doing whatever you typically do. Like, you're not doing that stuff,
right?
So that would be my first practical bit of advice for people that are really, they think of themselves on the edge, and they just find themselves falling into sin pretty much every time.
Right.
They just have a pretty bad track record. And on the other thing is, people with a bad track record, practically speaking, you know what they tell themselves? It's gonna happen anyway.
Yeah.
What can I do? I'm done anyway.
The despair is not in Allah, the despair is in themselves.
Yeah, despair is in themselves. And then the other thing is, when somebody's really in despair with themselves, they get pretty good at ignoring Allah. It's not like they don't want to talk to Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not like they're not aware that Allah is watching, but it's so embarrassing to just face Him. And so
I actually have a really powerful reflection on that. You remember when John Edwards got caught cheating on his wife with the lady that was with him in the campaign, whatever, had the daughter and that kind of stuff. I remember reading, I think it was Newsweek or Time magazine, but they did a whole article, because it was baffling to people that someone that was such a champion for good causes
and morality and ethics, and family values, right.
And I think today they had the news from New York, right? Anthony, the same thing going back to, but I mean, these politicians, right? And they did a whole issue on the psychology of a cheater. And subhanAllah, I found it so powerful, because in essence what they were saying is that, like, a cheater who has a family and kids in particular, he will try to neglect any image or any mention or any thought of his actual wife and children, because he wants to escape reality to properly enjoy his sin.
Yeah.
Right? So he's not going to
let him do it.
Yeah, he's not going to pull out pictures and stuff like that of his wife and children with the person he's just trying to put it all away. And so when you sin, you're purposely trying to put yourself in ghafla. You're purposely trying to take that pill, right? To put yourself in heedlessness.
That's why when somebody tries to remind somebody like that, they're like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about something else? Like, they don't want to deal with that.
Yeah,
that's
that
really,
guilt, which is fitrah, which is who they are.
Yeah.
So you need to have things that are set out for. So one thing is obviously keeping yourself busy, and that's why the ulama always talked about that good deeds are a treatment for bad deeds. Engaging yourself in good. So for example, dhikr will stop you from saying bad things, obviously, because you're using your tongue in a good way. So using your time in a good way, in a productive way. I tell people, memorize Quran. Once you start your track to become a hafiz, you don't have time to sin. You're so dedicated to getting that page a day out of the way, right? That you're not gonna have time. You're just so motivated, and so being goal oriented.
It's very fulfilling, man. I mean, the idea of sitting and memorizing Quran. Yes. Somebody sitting an hour, going over a page, going over the ayah over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that a person applied themselves for a solid 60 minutes doing nothing but memorizing the word of Allah, you cannot possibly argue there was a worldly motive.
No.
Right? These are 60 seconds that counted in your record, pure good deed, right? So it's so cool that the exercise of memorization is such an awesome opportunity to just earn endless reward. You know?
And Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said that a good deed is a moment of exhaustion and a lifetime of reward, whereas a sin is a fleeting moment of pleasure and a lifetime of hardship. Like the exhaustion goes away from the good deed when you see the reward in this life, just like with fasting, right? The sa'im, for the fasting person is farhatan, right? He has two times of joy. When you take that day, you know that you've finished the day of fasting, you know that you've finished the Quran. There's no happiness like the happiness of accomplishment and moving forward. Whereas a sin, it's like, all right, I'm going to ignore Allah. I'm going to close my eyes to all of the consequences of the sin. I'll deal with it afterwards. And it's misery and hardship and it's regrets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covers you initially. You know, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said, Allah always covers the sinner the first time. He always covers him to give him a chance. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposes you to those emotional consequences, those social consequences, the hits with your family, right? All of those other things. Because, and that's out of care for you, subhanAllah. Allah exposes you.
Get your act together.
Yeah, so that you can get your act together.
SubhanAllah. Because
you're just staying in this state of ghafla, and you're purposely trying to ignore. And you know, one practical thing like I can think of. So
there's one I had in mind too, but go ahead.
No, you go first.
Okay. I just don't think people talk to Allah enough. I mean, a lot of people are going to spend time in their car. A lot of people are going to have moments whether by themselves. And you know, just because you don't own the fortress of the Muslim, I don't know why you don't own the fortress of the Muslim. There's something wrong with you. Go buy it. But if you don't own it,
my dua,
my dua app, yeah, that was a good plug. So if you don't have access to sacred, supplications, that's fine. Talk to Allah in English, man. That's fine. Just talk to Allah. Like, don't ignore Him.
Can you talk to Allah in Urdu?
It's possible. It's probably difficult. I would take Punjabi over that, but just talk to Allah, and especially when, I would specifically say for young men, for example, I think you should make it a mission to get to the masjid for Fajr. Not just because it's an awesome good deed, because I think it has ramifications on the rest of the day.
Oh yeah.
And also
there's a hadith about that. أصبح نشيط طيب النفس. That whenever a person prays Fajr in Jama'ah, he wakes up energetic and with good spirits.
Yeah, you're in a good mood. Things just start turning up. Yeah. Just have a good day. And then the other thing is, just on your drive your drive back, your commute, just engage Allah in conversation. Ask Him for things. Admit things to Him. Kind of learn to accept the fact that you are actually in direct communication with Allah. A lot of times people memorize du'as and they memorize phrases, and they don't actually, even if they know what they mean, they're not conscious of it when they're saying them. So they're not really in a genuine conversation with Allah.
Absolutely.
Right? So they get reward, inshallah, for the good words that they recited. That's fine. But if you really want to experience kind of a different attitude, a different kind of taqwa, then you have to, the easiest way to do it is really engage Allah in conversation.
Let your heart talk, right?
Yeah.
And so remembering the sin, remembering how you felt when you were away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also something that I think is really important. Because if you look at reverts, for example, you'll find someone who's 40 years old and they'll say they're only 2 years old, right? Because I wasn't even alive when I was away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. That mentality, tawbah to them, and that's the ultimate tawbah, which is tawbah from shirk, repenting from shirk. That is the ultimate tawbah. Tawbah for them was a new life, and that's what repentance is supposed to be, a new life. But you remind yourself of jahiliyyah.
Yeah.
You do, but not in a way that would bring about self-hatred. Like Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he said, he has very famous, no one knows what the sin is that Sufyan al-Thawri committed. But he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade me from Qiyamul Layl for 20 years because of a sin that I committed. And he used to take a certain route home, and he would pass by a certain land, and he would cry. And he would say, this is the place I disobeyed Allah in. No one knows what it is. Allahu A'lam. But you find in his seerah always, he's talking about this is the place. And he would cry and remind himself. And subhanAllah, so it's not self-hatred, it's not hindering him, but he's reminding himself that, I'd messed up, and that in essence all of this is making things better. I'm trying to make things better. And Shaykh Muhammad Faqih one time, he shared something with someone in SoCal, that there is this person who's a non-Muslim, and this is where I think in a positive way, remembering what it was like to be away, who became sober because he came to the masjid in Anaheim. I don't remember the full details, but in Masjid Omar, right? And he became sober. And he comes every single year, and in rehab they give him a coin, like a reward every year that he stays sober. And he donates that coin to the masjid every single year. Like he gives it, because it's a sense of accomplishment. That's awesome. This is how many years? It's 6 years now, 7 years I've been away from that sin of drinking, from that darkness, right? From that dhulm and dhulumat, that darkness and that oppression of the self.
While we're on the topic, sometimes people think that when we're talking about tawbah and we're talking about people coming back to Allah, we're only talking about people that are doing some really seriously messed up stuff.
Right.
And they're the ones that we're addressing. Look, like you and I, people like us, people that even think that they've made tawbah at some point in their life and they've turned back to Allah, have dark patches, and they have dry spells, and they have times where there is a spiritual void, right? And you miss the days when you used to be different, your prayers used to be different, your reaction to a khutbah used to be different, when you heard Quran it used to be different, there was another time, right? And Ramadan is also an opportunity for people who don't necessarily, they're not outright sinners, they're not outrageous in their sin, but they've also they're feeling a spiritual gap, right? For them to try to fix that gap. And it's the fundamentals are still the same. You still just have to engage Allah in conversation. Like a lot of times I can tell you, at some points in my life, I felt like I was learning a lot about Islam, but I wasn't getting closer to Allah, right? And it happens. You're learning a lot. You're learning, like taking in a lot of knowledge, and you can spew a lot of knowledge back out too, but it's not bringing you closer to Allah, and you're not any more engaged with Allah than you were before that knowledge. You know, and there was a time, actually one time back in New York, I was just sitting there in the masjid thinking, man, when I didn't know any Arabic and I didn't know any lectures, nothing, I used to be so much more concentrated in prayer. I remember this same masjid, and I used to come here an hour before Jumu'ah started and read Quran. And now I'm coming like 5 minutes before and 10 minutes before. And I said, man, I haven't gotten better, I've gotten worse. I want to be that guy again. That guy was better than me, you know? Seriously. So there is that, you know, hopefully going back to the fundamentals, which people think they've crossed, like they've made tawbah already, they've crossed. No, I haven't. Yeah, it really is. Right? The
Prophet said, if you weren't to sin, I'd fear something much greater than sin, and that's ujb, which is being conceited and being proud of yourself.
You're okay with yourself.
Yeah, complacent, right? And so that's
scary, man.
That's very scary. So I think, again, there's, with the sin now, you need to have things that remind you of that of your tawbah. So, it could be like what a Tustari had, which was a muraqabah, right, reminding himself that Allah is watching and witnessing him. You know, I remember I was listening to one lecture and someone asked the Shaykh, how can I quit pornography? And he said, put a firewall and put the password as something in like Allahu Akbar or Subhanallah or La ilaha illallah. You won't be able to do it. And Subhanallah, like you really won't be able to do it. You're not going to.
That reminds me of something I did in college.
To unlock.
Something I did in college. I used to be. I was a gamer. Okay, I'm at Eid. I'm a gamer again every Eid. It's a game thing we do. But back in college, I used to waste a lot of time playing video games, man. 6 kids. A lot. No, college, dude. before the kids. Okay. I was alive before children. Okay. So you know what I went and just heard this amazing khutbah, and we still remember there was a guy outside the masjid. He used to sell stickers, like religious stickers, like So I just bought a sticker. I didn't even know what it meant, but I knew it was something from Allah. Right? So I put it, and I'm going to date myself, I put it on my Sega Genesis. So I wouldn't play the video game.
Playing Streets of Rage.
And I was just like, looking at that, like, yeah, I can't play it. I just can't watch this. So then I put one on my TV because I used to watch a lot of NBA. Right? And then put one on my TV. So I just stopped watching as much TV. It works, man. Then I was like, I wouldn't feel bad about playing a lecture or like sticking it in a VHS because I'm that old. But like... I'd feel bad about like watching a movie or like watching a ball game.
Because you've got something right in front of you that's like
it slaps you.
That's slapping.
So then you're like, maybe I should take the sticker off. Then you're like, I don't know if lightning's gonna strike. That's just.
Okay, don't promote any. I know. There's no power in the stickers. There's don't buy into that. All that stuff.
God, you're so sensitive. Okay.
But that's the idea, right? Having the signpost, having something like that reminds you. That coin, right? That sticker, that statement.
Yeah, you gotta have
something on your computer screen, something that is just constantly serving as a reminder. Mm-hmm. Now, from a practical level, what if you can't do it by yourself, right? What if you're not you're every time you try, you fail by yourself, right? So, how do you seek help from different people then? Like, and obviously,
I know it's embarrassing.
Major rehab. I'm talking about like even like I'm falling short, like I'm not memorizing Quran like I used to. I'm not going to the masjid like I used to. How do I reach out and how do I get that help?
I think it takes, first of all, stepping on one's pride and one's self-esteem to be able to say I need help, especially in a matter that's so personal like spirituality, right? So it's not easy for people to come to just somebody and say, I'm not a good person. Can you help me out here?
Or even with a more embarrassing sin like that, I watch pornography.
Right. So and I would even say you don't have to expose your sin. That's not necessarily the case. You just have to find people that, even if you don't admit your problem to them, if you can find good company. One of the most important forms of rizq that I think people overlook is good company, right? And we're very blessed here in Dallas for the masajid that we have and the company that we enjoy in them. There's almost like an effortless opportunity to find good company, right? At least in the masjid scene. And some people aren't in the masjid scene. A lot of people that are watching this are probably like not masjid, that's not their thing, you know? So they're doing the Ramadan thing, but masjid is kind of once in a while maybe. Right. But I think the masjid, one of its most fundamental purposes and functions is you naturally meet good people at the masjid. And Allah puts people in your rizq, in your path that otherwise you would have never met, and you would have missed out on just gems. Right. You know, wonderful people. And they don't have to be the guy that's on the pulpit or, you know, the imam or the guy leading the prayer. It could be the guy praying next to you. And you strike a friendship and you start talking. But it's just, I think it's a really good, you know, time to socialize at the masjid. People coming for the sake of Allah, Allah puts a barakah in their gathering too. And they're in them meeting each other and them saying salam to each other. So, you know, that would be my first step for people that are, you know, they're like, I can't do this on my own. Fine, I admit you can't do it on your own. Go to the masjid. I don't know anybody at the masjid. Doesn't matter, just go.
You know, Shaykh Omar when he came to America, he didn't make it an official fatwa, but he kind of said no one should live alone in America. No one, like in college, he was speaking to college students primarily back then, and you know, it was a group of immigrants and saying no one should live alone in America.
That is deep advice.
And obviously it's anywhere in the world. It's not just in America, obviously. It's when you're alone, a lot of things can happen. And I think even we need to just kind of clarify on the exposure part. Al-jahr bis-su, or actually coming out and saying that, exposing your sin, which is so condemned in the Quran and the Sunnah, is not the same as the elephant in the room thing, where you just don't seek help when you really, really cannot. That's correct. Really, really cannot get over it by yourself. I mean, you're really addicted. Sometimes you really do have to go to someone. Not in an unnecessary way, but you know, Imam Qudam rahimahullah talked about this too, just going to someone to seek help for your sin because you really can't get over it. Like, look, I'm messing up, I need you to watch me. I need you to make sure that I don't do. I'm not going to go tell the whole world. I'm not going to tweet about it or put a Facebook status like I'm guilty of the sin, help me people. No, but like go to one person who you really trust, for example, and you're really like, I need you to watch me. I need you to be on top of me to make sure I don't go back to that. If I backbite a lot in gatherings, I need you to tell me. Like when you see me in the gathering, I need you to just kind of signal at me, because I need people then that will remind me of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
People are fortunate if they have that, man. That's not always the case.
Right.
It's hard to find like sincere people that sincerely want to give you good advice. It's a rare commodity in the world. And if you have that in your household or in your family, you're lucky, you know. I would also say, like, you know, for the people that are watching, and if, you know, Allah only knows what your sins are and what issues you may have. If you have stuff like that on your phone, on your computer, just right now, stop listening, go and delete it. Just get rid of it. Sign off, you know, discontinue the subscription, whatever it may be. Just get those things off of your device. They shouldn't be in the palm of your hand. They should not be accessible to you anymore. And make the good intention to Allah, Ya Allah, give me the strength to not re-download this ever again. Clean out the cache, format the hard drive, whatever you got to do, just do it. And you're doing it for Allah. Nobody's watching, you're at home, right? You're listening to this on your phone or whatever, right? Just when this is done, just go and clean out. Just clean it up. And it's practical. It's not hard. You can do it. And once you do it, inshallah, you'll feel so much better. It'll give you the chance to cry before Allah as you're deleting it. Ya Allah, just don't let me do this again. I just want to turn back to you. I don't want to be this person anymore. I know you made me better than this. This is humiliating myself. You created me with more dignity than this. You know, one of my favorite ayat in the Quran recently has become مَا لَكُمْ لَا تَرْجُونَ لِلَّهِ وَقَارًا. There's so many dimensions to that ayah. Why don't you have expectations that Allah will dignify you? Why don't you think that Allah, why don't you have hopes that Allah will dignify you? And why aren't you hopeful to dignify Allah, to grant Allah His honor? So it's this idea that Allah wants to honor you, and you should hope that Allah wants to honor you, not to humiliate you. You're humiliating yourself, so find dignity in yourself again. And I think this is the time to do it. It's easier to fight the waswasa of shaitan now and to get over it. And if you could survive the next couple of weeks without that stuff, that means you can do it. That's proof you can do it. It's not like oxygen. You survived. There was no gas mask on. Absolutely. You know, you did it. So that's people have to be told to just take that step, you know. The same thing I would argue for, like, you know, text messages, and if you've been texting this boy or this girl or whatever, just cut it off. Don't even say I'm not texting you anymore because it's Ramadan.
You know what the biggest trap of shaitan is with that? Is that I want to break it off, but I'm afraid I'll hurt her. I'm afraid I'll hurt him. On the day of judgment, a mother will be running away from her child.
You're not going to be worried about anybody's feelings.
You're not going to be worried about anybody's feelings. You just got to be selfish when it comes to cutting that stuff. Like, and subhanAllah, that goes back to ma'rifah of Allah, being aware of Allah. Yeah. You'd rather be offending Allah than offending that person.
Yeah. And don't bring religion into it like, oh, she said salam, I should respond with a wa alaikum assalam. No, you shouldn't. Just chill out, dude. Just don't respond. Ignore those texts.
She read Surah Al-Rahman to me on the phone last night.
What? Where did you get that from?
I actually heard that one before.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
But I gotta write that one down. That's pretty good.
I'm sorry if you're watching, by the way. You are, but yeah, you break it off, and because you go back to remembering Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. The last advice I'd give, and I'll kind of let you because we're getting late in the discussion.
Yeah.
The last advice I'd give in this regard, from a practical perspective, I did recently a Quran weekly video on this too, which is something that my Shaykh taught me, which is that what causes you, the penalty thing, right? Awesome. What causes you to sin in the first place is hubb ad-dunya. Hubb ad-dunya is the head. Loving the world too much is the head of every problem. And so that story of the companion that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he told the Prophet ﷺ he kissed a woman in the marketplace, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala revealed the ayah encouraging as-salah was zakah, basically treating it with positive remedies, right? And particularly when it comes to as-sadaqah, charity. One thing that I remember very powerfully that Shaykh Raja Hafidullah, what he said, and I'll never forget this because this was life-changing advice for me in particular. He said, let your love of dunya be the cause of your repentance. So what he said is, every time you commit a sin, penalize yourself. So you give $100 in sadaqah every time you go back to that sin. If you're still going back to it again, all right, fine, it's going to cost you $200 this time, $300, $400. You will quit because the love of dunya is what's making you sin. Mm-hmm. So the love of dunya will keep you away from that sin until the love of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is enough to keep you away from the sin.
Yeah,
it's any means necessary to keep you away from the sin initially.
Whatever it takes to get started with that.
Right.
SubhanAllah.
So, you got some last words, inshallah ta'ala, on this topic, then we'll kind of close it up.
I think that there are two kinds of, from this brief conversation, there's two things I wanted to say. The first of them is, there are people that are engaged in wrongdoing, but they somehow are able to tell themselves that it's not that wrong. Mm-hmm. That it's actually okay. Like I talk to her, but we talk about Islam.
Yeah.
You know? I'm reciting Surah Al-Rahman. Exactly. And this idea that shaitan beautifies their deeds, I get emails like that all the time. You know, and she's a good person, and we talk about Islamic topics. And
well, on that, you want to share your email address?
No.
Exactly.
So that's one. Like, don't kid yourself. Right. Don't think that you're doing something right when it's, you know, part of it's wrong or part of it's right. No, it's wrong. It's wrong. You should have the conscience to know if your brother or your sister or your husband or your wife, if they were doing these things, it wouldn't be acceptable to you. So you know, there's some moral standards you have to abide by. The second thing is on a positive note. Ramadan's over. I was telling you this before we got here. Ramadan's over. A couple of days go by, and then you're about to eat lunch, and you just stop, and you're like, should I be eating? Wait, is that okay? And then this is like almost like an automatic mechanism that I shouldn't be eating first, and then you're like, oh no, alhamdulillah, it's okay. Right? Which to me is like Ramadan was successful. That right there is proof of taqwa. What that is the consciousness that I might be disobeying Allah kicked in even for something halal. Like you were willing to now check for something that's totally legit and say, wait, is that okay right now? Can I do that right now? And then you went forward and did it because you checked. If that mentality can be fostered, like just outside of Ramadan, like I'm gonna just, before I do this, is this okay? Like that guilt trip? You know, the same guilt you feel when you're about to eat something or about to drink something should be the same guilt that you should feel now when you're about to look at something, when you're about to send a message to someone, when you're about to, you know, take a picture of something. Like, you know, that's the same guilt. That mechanism is now put inside you, and it's been made physical. That's the beautiful thing about it. I hope I can communicate this clearly. Taqwa is a spiritual thing, and Allah has brought it closer to home by making it a physical response. Right? It's a bodily response. Hunger and thirst. It's a bodily response, and He's made it physical for us. He's made it a reality for us. It's not some abstract thing anymore. Right. That's the gift of Ramadan. Like it, and every human being every Muslim feels this. 2, 3, 4 days after Ramadan, you kind of like, oh God, oh yes, I can eat. Okay, and you do through that self-checking, that muraqabah and that muhasabah becomes automatic inside you. Right. So don't let it die. That's not the time to let it die. So I would say, like, excessive dua, inshallah, and then, this idea of really just hold off on your bad habits these last couple of days. If you can't do a lot of good deeds, stop yourself from doing bad deeds. Just put the brake on the bad stuff. Right. Do no harm.
SubhanAllah said, if you can't do anything good, don't harm people.
Don't harm people. And that begins with yourself.
It starts with yourself. It begins with yourself. If you can't do anything good for yourself, don't harm yourself.
If you don't have the concentration for ibadah, go spend time with your parents, dude.
Right.
Just go clean up.
I think that progression is the progression that the scholars of Tazkiyah always talked about, that there's 3 levels of fasting. So they had the level of fasting, which is the fasting of the body from food and drink and desires, and then the level of fasting, the fasting of the eyes, the fasting of the ears, the fasting of the tongue, the fasting of the limbs, and then extra special fasting, which is ihsan, fasting from the thoughts of this world. You can't get there until you go through these steps. So like you said, Allah brought it as close to home as it can be with the physical realm, and then hopefully that evolves into the spiritual realm. And then once it evolves into the spiritual realm and you taste the sweetness of that spiritual realm, then you excel.
I feel like in any organization or any career, it's necessary to take a break and to reevaluate, right? And those are sometimes the most important meetings, the ones that are like a vacation for the company or whatever, right? Our lives as Muslims, we get caught up in dunya, and it's so incredible that we have a weekly getaway from dunya, Jumu'ah, and then we have a yearly getaway from dunya, which is Ramadan, and then we have a lifetime getaway from dunya, which is Hajj. So like at multiple levels, Allah just pulls us out and just, okay, let's put this back in perspective. So don't miss out on this. This is the yearly convention of Islam. This is what this is, a 30-day convention to get you in gear. Like, don't miss out on this. Because it really does have ramifications if it's done right for the next. It'll last you till the next year. Absolutely. That's what it's supposed to do. So a lot of times khatibs complain, Ramadan is 30 days and then people go back to sin another 11 months. I'm not saying that. I'm saying actually you can really, and I can really take advantage of this month, and inshallah it will reap the benefits of it for 11 months.
Right. Absolutely, inshallah. Well, anyway, so we've kind of, obviously we could talk on and on this topic, inshallah. And I really want to, first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming and being a guest with ILF. Alhamdulillah, we're talking about this huge surprise announcement. So just a little bit of background. First and foremost, alhamdulillah, we started Inflix 1 year ago. And alhamdulillah, this concept of fusing knowledge with service, which is the vision of ILF, of Islamic Learning Foundation, which is really as practical as it gets. When we study anything, we study it as practical as it gets. And so we just had our fiqh fasting class, Sanitize Your Soul, and we had over 20,000 views, mashallah, within the first 24 hours of it, alhamdulillah. And what we wanted, that, by the way. Oh, nice, mashallah. So we wanted to grow into something that is greater than that, inshallah ta'ala, and we want to reach as many people as we can. So alhamdulillah, 2 big announcements. Number 1, for those of you, if you went to the ILF Texas website today, ilftexas.org or inflix.com, then you would have noticed a completely new outlook. You would have noticed, alhamdulillah, that the website has completely been redone. And mashallah, the entire staff of ILF are volunteers, by the way. So we ask Allah to bless them for their efforts, first and foremost, for everything that they're doing, really dedicating themselves day in and day out to put this thing together. They are the backbone of the organization, so please make dua for them. The second thing is that inshallah ta'ala, what we want to do now, because of the barakah that came from those classes, the fiqh fasting class, the different classes that were open, inshallah ta'ala, now if you go to Inflix, if you go to ILF Texas and you go to Inflix membership and you click on it, and you put your information, you get instant access. Okay, you get instant access. But you'll be encouraged to donate. You'll be encouraged to support this project. Why? Because we want as many people as possible to be able to benefit from this, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, there's over 100 hours of class time in that library. We want as many people as possible around the world to be able to benefit, inshallah ta'ala. No one to be denied that access, inshallah ta'ala, to this effort. But at the same time, those who can afford to support this, inshallah, they should support this. So it's not a few.
It's free for those who can't afford it.
It's free for those who can afford it. If you can afford it, it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your conscience. So that's the huge announcement that we were talking about, that alhamdulillah, now anyone can go online, sign up, inshallah ta'ala, get access to everything, bidnillahi ta'ala. And you are encouraged, especially in the month of Ramadan, those of you who can support it should support it, inshallah ta'ala. You should have that monthly subscription, inshallah ta'ala. And there's actually another website that I want you to write down, www.iloveilmflix.org. Okay, iloveilmflix.org is our official donation website this Ramadan. You know, we want to see how many people, inshallah ta'ala, will put their heart into this, that have benefited from this, and that can afford to support it, inshallah ta'ala, so that it could continue to expand, inshallah ta'ala, and move on to something even greater, inshallah. And hopefully we can have more and more programs with you guys' support. The last thing, we talked about transcription last year. Alhamdulillah, the Veiled Blessings class, which was Tafsir Surah Maryam from Ayah 1 to Ayah 40, and then Marked for Greatness, which was Ayah 41 to 65. Those classes have been completely transcribed now, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, as well as some other classes that have their initial transcription done. So Scattered Winds, which was Tafsir Surah Al-Dhariyat, also has been transcribed. Inshallah ta'ala, within 1 month, I need to do the final review of it. It's going to be released, inshallah ta'ala, for everyone, so that you can actually go through and read it. And I think this is our dream. We talk about this all the time, you know, really making ilm accessible, and tafsir, making people fall in love with the Quran again, making people fall in love with the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, making it relevant, bidnillahi ta'ala, as much as possible to our daily lives. And so I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this a new phase for ILF that is blessed. I ask Allah to put barakah in it. And also, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless everything that you've been doing with the podcasts that have reached millions of people, alhamdulillah, Bayyina TV and things of that sort that are really having an immense impact on people around the world. And lastly, I want to thank Ikna Relief, really, who has sponsored us, alhamdulillah, from the very beginning when we had nothing. We were scrapping. They were our exclusive sponsor that really...
Ikna Relief is awesome.
Alhamdulillah, there you go.
People are...
But are there any words you want to share, inshallah ta'ala, in closing about you know, this effort, inshallah ta'ala, and things of that sort?
Look, folks that are watching this, these kinds of efforts, I think they're going to be, you know, they're going to live long beyond the people that are involved in them and the ones that are working on them. And inshallah ta'ala, they have the potential of shaping what, you know, Islam is going to look like in this country and maybe even around the world. So, I mean, we're really on the verge of a major turning point in Islamic history, because Islamic literacy has gone down so much, right? And people don't go to books anymore. People don't access the volumes anymore. So the efforts of taking those libraries of Islamic knowledge and to make that available by video and lecture and simplified lessons and explanation, and for people to process that information and present it in a way that's digestible, is a huge accomplishment. Because if you're going to go to those texts yourself, and I've tried, you'll go crazy. It's complicated stuff. It takes real tulabul ilm and sitting with a scholar to process some of this classical work, you know, to be able to make sense of it and to be able to derive benefit that Muslims need to derive. So the efforts that are trying to catalog this knowledge for the benefit of ourselves, our children, our families, and inshallah our future, are really you can't put a value on it. You really can't put a value on it. So I would wholeheartedly support this effort, inshallah ta'ala, the people at ILF Texas Ilmflix, and, you know, similar efforts that are happening anywhere, really, that are happening anywhere. And I would encourage, if there are du'at and ulama that are listening, that, you know, I know you're humble and you don't think you don't got it, but there are people in your community that think that you're of tremendous benefit. And what you're doing, the khutbah you're giving, the halaqat you're doing, are of tremendous benefit. Record them, archive them. Because you benefited 10, 20, 30, 100 people sitting there. But if this thing goes on YouTube or Vimeo or, you know, an Ilmflix or somewhere else, maybe 1,000 people will benefit from it. Maybe somebody's life will change and you've never met them before. You know, so just don't underestimate the value of these kinds of efforts. And I think, inshallah ta'ala, we'll see the fruits of them. I have full conviction we're going to see the fruit of this labor, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, when we go before Allah Azza wa Jal. And I pray that all of us are rewarded for every second that we spend in His remembrance, and that He overlook our shortcomings.
Ameen. And I just want to also just add one thing here. That, you know, alhamdulillah, I went to some communities, because we all know there's a huge shortage of imams. And I'm not saying that these things are replacing imams. There's no doubt about it.
It's still filling some void, man.
Yeah, but it's filling some void. I've been to communities that, alhamdulillah, they would get together every Tuesday night and they would watch the class and they'd take notes and they'd have discussion after. I mean, I've been to many communities like that, alhamdulillah. It's helping fill that void, inshallah ta'ala. And hopefully just producing that desire and that love for ilm, inshallah. So again, you know, in closing, please do be a part of it. That's, you know, no one has any excuse at all. So be a part of it with your family, inshallah. Watch it, watch these lectures in your house, these classes in your house. Take notes, share amongst each other. In your masjid, if you don't have an imam or it's been dead for some time, broadcast these lectures and try to make them virtual halaqat, inshallah ta'ala. In the meantime, and lastly, again, we really are going to count now on the support of those brothers and sisters who can, and I would hope that you all know we're not going to do. I can't see any of you, so we're not going. And Nouman hates it when people do that anyway, so I'm not going to be like $1,000 or $5,000 or no. But, yeah, exactly. That's what he does at every fundraiser. He just leaves. Yeah, but so we're counting on the generosity though of those who really see the value of this project.
Oh, don't worry about it. They're going to give.
They're going to give, inshallah ta'ala. So more importantly than that is your du'a. Jazakumullah khairan. I hope you enjoyed it. Barakallah feek, Ustadh Nouman, for joining again.
Good.
And you guys should move to Dallas, inshallah ta'ala. That's all I'm going to say. And may Allah bless you all.
I don't want too many people in Dallas, so move. Okay, that's fine.
We don't need too many New Yorkers, right? That's right. You brought that migration.
You should move to Jersey.
So jazakumullah khairan to all of you. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.